I would say learn all you can before you reach conclusions. There are plenty of people out there who have prepackaged conclusions for you to reach. You need to build up a level of knowledge and experience so that you are no longer putty in the hands of somebody else who has his own agenda.
My question is, what is the antidote towards toxic masculinity?
Well, the antidote is responsible masculinity. And what does responsible mean? It means, well, if you're responsible, then you're trying to do what's honest first. So you're careful with your speech and your actions. You're careful with your speech in that you don't say things that you know to be false. And you're careful in your actions so that you don't have to lie about what you do. That's a good start. And then the next thing would be that you're capable of taking responsibility for yourself at least, so that once you're an adult, no one else has to bend over backwards to ensure that you don't unduly suffer in the world. And so that's responsibility for yourself. And then if you get halfway good at that, well then, you might think about taking on the responsibility of a family and contributing to your community and doing all those things in a harmonious manner. And that's obviously the antidote to toxic masculinity.
Yeah, so one of the things that I wanted to just clarify on what you were saying is that a lot of times in today's society, I'll keep on repeating that, when it comes to a man being masculine and doing the things that is required of him, when he is basically leaning into his masculinity and performing those things, understanding there's pressure and burden of performances on him to deliver and to do things as a husband, as a brother, as a father, it comes across where if it is not done in a way that is palatable to, I would say, others around when it comes to women or beta men, there would be that is too, I would say, to the way, if you come across in giving a command or making a statement in saying what you're saying and knowing what you want and asking for it and asking whoever is around to comply to be able to do something, you're asking there for the common good, and to have the end result to, like he says, to have a harmonious family. So a lot of times, and because our society has been so feminized, a lot of men, they have been taught how to emote like women. So when they encounter men that is very masculine, they tend to shame those men for being masculine, and then they would fall into the woman's frame as to shaming those men as being toxic masculine. So he is breaking it down as he always does, Jordan Peterson. So let's get back into it.
Masculinity, which is not a phrase I would generally use. I just think about it as, what would you call it? I think sinful behavior is a much more accurate representation personally, but it's honesty and responsibility. And I do think about it as a function of harmony. I got that a lot from reading Jean Piaget, whose work was a psychological extension of Kant's categorical imperative, because Kant believed that
not to just break his word there, but you can see she asked the question thinking that she's catching him out and how to basically put him on the spot, but he goes into a detail and in-depth explanation where she's standing there completely, I would say, in awe and listening to what he has to say. So sometimes when it comes to the got you questions, it's all about, I got you and I made you look like a fool. But the fact that she's listening and not interjecting and jumping shows that there was a certain measure of good faith of her asking the question and also wanting a response and explanation at that.
You should act in a manner such that if the way you acted became a universal, that would be beneficial. But Piaget formalized that very nicely, showing that one of the bases for the emergence of a system of genuine ethics was an iterable form of reciprocity. So that, so for example, I can give you a quick example of that. My granddaughter, who's now 15 months old, has discovered a new game. And it's a Piagetian game, a developmental game. And she discovered this by watching, but also on her own, and partly because it's a very deep part of human nature. So she has this little wooden spoon. And her game is, you sit with her at the table, and her game is, she gives you the spoon. And then you take it. And then you give it back. And then she's all happy about that. And then she gives the spoon to the person who's sitting beside her. And then they give it back to her, and she's very happy about that. And so it's an amazing game because she's learned to give up something, to let go of something that she wants, and to trust someone else to return it to her. And that's what she's playing with. And then you can play with that game. It's quite fun. So, you know, and you have to pay careful attention to her and watch how she's manifesting her emotions. And so maybe what you do is you take the spoon and you hide it under your hand. That sort of disconcerts her a bit. Then you show it to her and pick it up and give it to her, and she's happy about that because what she sees is that the principle of reciprocity can maintain itself across a set of transformations, and that's really exciting to her.
So, I mean, everyone is quiet, everyone is listening. They are being given an example when it comes to him explaining the analogy, where when it comes to the child learning reciprocity and also learning the different in how that can transform into different variations, but still the foundation is there for reciprocity, to be able to understand that principle, and to then obviously feel the emotion of getting that feedback or that response back, and then having that positive type of memory being connected to it.
Or you can give her the spoon and she can give it back to you, and then she can reach for it and you can pull it away 1/4 of an inch, and that sort of disconcerts her, and then she'll
What's happening?
you want to repeat
sorry,
that?
I'm sorry.
Give it the mic,
I
come
said
on.
that didn't cover really a toxic masculinity, right? Because
Yes,
you-
it's
no,
dealing
no,
with
but
the
you just-
just dealing with the
you just
principle of
said- no, but
reciprocity.
you just said that you have to be honest and responsible as a man, right?
Well, put it this way: when I'm giving the spoon back to my granddaughter, I'm not engaging in toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
And that was the point that I was trying to make, is that, and this deep reciprocity and trust is part of the social contract, and it is precisely the antidote to what precisely, since we're going to pursue this, what precisely is toxic masculinity?
So this is where things goes sideways, because she listened. I thought she was listening. Like I said, the way she was quiet and not interjecting. However, it seems that she was doing the typical listening, not to comprehend, but listening to respond, because while he's explaining to her what he's explaining, giving her the analogy, and just to understand the basic type of psyche that goes into, explaining reciprocity and having that trust relationship, that if you are investing and you are doing for the other person, that you're expecting that back as well, to a certain extent. And if you get it, you obviously there's a connection and a bond of trust that's been built. But now he's trying to explain that to her and take her on this journey to get to his point. But she wants the buzzwords, she wants the toxic masculinity, she wants it in there, and she now wants an explanation. And he flips it on her where he asks her, so, okay, if we're going down this path, what is toxic masculinity? And you define it to me. After this, you'll see things, it goes off the rails.
As opposed to, say, toxic femininity or toxic humanity. What exactly are you asking me about?
Get that face.
I really want to know what you like, how you would describe toxic masculinity. Because
No, I want you to define what toxic masculinity constitutes. Since we're going to define things so carefully, let's do it.
well, I think
Okay, guys, sorry, but we really have to move on. So there will be more questions later on. There will be a lot of
There's there's always a simp that's going to try and save her. Jordan asked her a specific question. She's asking a question. He's asking her to define the term that she's using. And Captain White Knight jumps in, wanting to stop the questioning, because he's seeing that she is floundering and she is basically and blank. And he wants to now move on to the next topic, and the crowd is basically showing their disdain in the fact that no, she wanted this. So let's go down and let's explain and have a discussion. Let the two of them talk it further, and let's see if she knows what the heck she's talking about. Because at the end of the day, it's pointless you bringing up something, and when you are asked about it, you can't give an answer. So, Captain Sumpy, he will jump in there and he'll try to basically save her, but the crowd is not having it. Let's see what happens.
Opportunity
No,
to
but
ask
maybe
questions.
let's if you. Okay, so let's define it shortly.
All right, shortly, please.
Gosh, okay. I think that the moment when you kind of, I have a hard time to kind of describe it in English. Let's say, that you kind of go over a boundary that kind of neglects the freedom of the opposite, well, gender or whatsoever. So that's toxic masculinity, and that you kind of have.
He just spoke about the reciprocity. He spoke about how that process, how that trust is built over and when they was playing the game with the child, and how the different variations as to him giving the spoon back, and then also the spoon being given, her giving the spoon, him giving it back. She trusts that he and feels happy. She gives him a spoon again, and then he then puts his hand over it, but then he uncovers the spoon and gives it back to her. Then she feels happy. So that different variations, he's explained it to her, and he's explained it in the context of reciprocity and a reciprocal relationship. Yet she is pushing the agenda of the one person being happy and the other person being toxic, because that's the narrative she wants to push. So let's see how Jordan Peterson explains things further.
But that would also be toxic femininity.
Well, may I like finish my sentence?
Yeah, because it goes back both ways. If you're going to say toxic masculinity, toxic femininity would also then play a role if you're talking about the one side benefiting and the other side is not. It cannot just be from one gender to the other. It is vice versa.
Sure.
Please, thank you. And then also, I lost my sentence now. But no, I will be back. I'm back. But more in the sense that,
Suspect.
yeah, can someone help me here in the audience?
Okay, so before we
So he asked her specifically, define toxic masculinity, the term that you're using, and she's asking the crowd to help her in basically defining the term that she is using. Am I missing something?
move on, let me point something out. That I was willing to undertake this line of discussion, allowing for the possibility that the category of toxic masculinity had some content, right? But if we're going to pursue that line of reasoning and quibble about the answer, then we're certainly going to quibble about the definition that's embedded. If we're going to pursue that line of reasoning and quibble about the answer, then we're certainly going to quibble about the definition that's embedded in the question. And so part of what's happened in our discourse is that we're required ethically to assume a priori, merely out of politeness, that the utterance toxic masculinity actually constitutes a meaningful phrase. And if you push it, you find very rapidly that it doesn't.
Exactly. So when you ask someone about toxic masculinity, what define it, they will most likely end up a stuttering mess like this lady asking to call a friend, asking for a helpline because they don't know what the hell they're talking about. If you talk about misogyny, people use the term, and the only reason they use the term is because they are offended and their feelings is hurt, and they are not listening to the argument that's being made and keeping their feelings out of it so they could understand and comprehend what the point is that's being tried to make, and then basically debate and rebuttal that point with a logic argument back as to giving facts and giving their point of view as to how they understand it, and basically giving a concise argument back. That never happens because it's all about how they feel. And when you ask them what the word means, their explanation and their definition or their thought process behind it is something completely different to what the actual definition of the word is. So it's just a lesson that I want you guys to know and learn, that sometimes we use these terms, and unfortunately, a lot of people get into their feelings. We always talk in the manosphere about facts over feelings, facts over feelings. I'll say it a third time, facts over feelings. It is difficult at times to do it. I myself am constantly pushing and learning and basically trying to make sure that I am always practicing and being more stoic in calming down my emotion, understanding what is being explained, understanding the person's point of view, and if it is based on facts, and if I don't know about the topic, then I will do some research to understand it, and basically know what the facts is around it, and be able to respond. If I don't know, I'll shut up and I will listen to them, and I will take it. Okay, fine, that's what you're saying, but obviously I will come back. But if they are presenting facts and they're telling me where to go, and I can research it and I can find out, if it is the truth, and if it is based on a specific study, you know what, then my feelings needs to get out of it, and I cannot be going into an argument and using certain buzzwords to win the argument, and end up at the end not knowing what these words mean. So let's just finish off and close off the video with Jordan Peterson.
Because it's very, very, very difficult to define, and definitions actually matter. And so if it's a matter of transgressing against the boundaries of gender appropriate behavior, well, first of all, that indicates that there's something universal and normative about gender appropriate behavior, which is something that people who push the idea of toxic masculinity generally tend not to presume. And second, it's just as likely to happen among women as among men, in which case it's not toxic masculinity. So maybe on to the next question.
Okay.
As always, Jordan Peterson giving a concise and a in-depth and detailed explanation, and when he pushes further and peels a couple of layers back, you'll always find that certain people will be using, like I said, using buzzwords, not understanding what it means. In the manosphere, we constantly get hit with the misogyny, like I mentioned earlier, but a lot of women do not understand, or even men do not understand, that a word such as misandry exists, and it is the exact opposite of misogyny. So, you know what, that is just a lesson here on the Manosphere Paradigm today. I just thought I wanted to cover this clip and have a discussion around this, so that you can understand to stick to the facts over feelings. And if you do not understand the word, there's a lot of times I listen to Rolo Tomasi, shout out to The Rational Male. There's a lot of times I've read in his book, The Positive Masculinity, words like female solipsism, a lot of different terminology that's being used within the manosphere. And you always learn, and you always have to educate yourself, understanding the meaning of these words, so that when you use it in a discussion, in a debate forum, you know what the hell you're talking about. So I'll see you in the next vid. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and the notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers. I'm out.